Hello, I'm Lisa Carlson, and I am the campus dietitian at Northwestern. And we're going to be doing these kind of fun Zoom information meetings. The first one is on mindful eating, savoring the moment, and enjoying the journey. We're going to have a little quiz, or not a quiz, a little question and answer afterwards. And let's get going. Okay, let's start by just talking a little bit about what mindfulness is about. It's a word that's used a lot. You see it on magazines and social media, and it's really about being present in the moment. Whatever you're doing, you're focusing just on what you're doing. It's about not judging, and it's just being aware of your surroundings. Experiencing stuff, whether it's walking outside or whether it's eating. And this goes nicely into mindful eating because mindful eating is taking that same practice and putting it to food. So paying attention in the moment while you're eating, not distracted, um, enjoying the flavors, the textures, the colors that you put on your plate. The one thing I like to tell clients and students is it's about enjoying the journey. And it's never about getting to the destination necessarily. It's about working on the journey because every day it's a new experience with mindful eating. Why is mindful eating important? Why is mindfulness important? There's a lot of robust research right now, and it's showing very much a lot of promise in reducing anxiety, depression, a lot of health concerns like uh, type 2 diabetes, blood pressure. It also has helped with certain kinds of eating disorders, just stressful eating, emotional eating, pretty much feeling good. And I think any of us want to manage any of these conditions because I imagine that we all, may have one of them. One of the biggest things I find on the opposite end of mindful eating is what I call distracted dining. And there's a fair amount of research that shows if you're using your cell phone, if you're watching television while you're eating, if you're on a computer, even if you're reading like a case study or something, you will either increase the calories that you consume at that meal. The other thing that I think is so interesting is you have less of a food memory of what you're eating, and you might eat more in the next meal. So distracted dining is never really good. We're just going to get really quickly into tips and strategies to become more mindful, kind of enjoy the journey, as I say it. First thing is, and this is so important, is be grateful. We know this is a really tricky time with COVID. We need to be grateful for every time we eat, that we have food on the table. We know that a lot of people don't. And whether that means starting in silence or a blessing or just even taking a few deep breaths that are like belly breaths in through the nose, it is a really good way to start. The second thing is this is, it's probably a little bit for students and a little bit for those who were students once and have graduated, is setting the mood to eat. And what that means is if you're eating back in your room as a student, don't eat on a cluttered table, desk, at least make a little space that is designed for eating. If you're eating at home, the same thing. I mean, sit at the table. I always like this TPC, sit at the table, eat off a plate and in a chair. It's just a really good idea instead of in front of the television, instead of eating in front of the computer. This probably seems obvious, but mindful eating is about enjoying the flavors, smelling, enjoying the textures, the colors. When I work with clients and students, I often say, like, when you put a really nice plate together, what does it look like? One thing they always tell me is it's colorful, and that's really cool. Um, Another part of it is chewing more. We're talking a little bit about slowing down, but just chewing more is a really good sensation, and it helps us appreciate the food that we have. I mentioned to remove distractions. One of the most important ones is taking the cell phone and putting it face down and not using it while you're eating. And don't eat in front of the television as well. We have another acronym that we call HALT, And this is something, first of all, when you're hungry, there's several layers of hunger. And it's important to ask yourself, what are you really hungry for? And if you really are hungry. And when I talk to clients or students, sometimes they'll say, well, I just feel like something, and they're not really hungry, but maybe they're hungry for some social attention. They need connection. Maybe they haven't had enough sleep and they need to take a rest, or maybe just even a walk. But if you're hungry, the H of this, then take a break and eat. If you're something else like anxious, lonely, or tired, maybe you need to do something else. Slow down. And I like to say, be a turtle. This is, it's not about a race. Don't be a tiger where, it's like ferocious eating. Just slow down, enjoy your food is always a good thing. And savoring the journey, so important. Focus on the today. It's all we have. We know that, one bite at a time. Um, I think again, one thing that COVID has really taught us is to be in the moment and to enjoy the precious time we have. Enjoy the journey, like I say, not about the destination necessarily. It's about the journey, and we take a new journey every day. This is just a kind of a fun graphic. It's a little bit tongue in cheek. It's something that I borrowed from another source. If anyone's interested in this, we have copies of it, but it just kind of summarizes all the things that we're talking about. One thing we didn't talk about is just the center of the plate. Make it more vegetables, make it more sustainable, more plant-based. That's good for people, it's good for the planet, and it's obviously, if you're eating more plants, it's good for animals. So that's kind of my summary slide. And I believe that might be, oh yeah, then this is my contact information. I'm going to turn it over to Amy because she might have some questions for me.
Thanks, Lisa. Oh, I think I'm echoing a little. So I'm gonna have. Oh, Lisa, could you maybe turn down your volume a little bit,
Let's see.
or you could mute while I ask and.
I got it. Sorry about that.
That's okay. Okay, so my first question, and some of these are questions that I might have or others might have, but this one's pretty specific. How do you suggest mindful eating if you normally have to eat during a commute? Let's say you have a long train ride or you're commuting into school or work. Can you still mindful eat during that commute?
That is a great question. And I get that a lot. And I guess one way I'd answer it is that mindful eating and eating in general is never going to be perfect. There's sometimes that we do it a lot better than, a lot, quote, better than other times. And sometimes if you need to eat, um, you need some sustenance, but you're on the train, you're going to go to something else, you have to do two things at once. But I would say, think about the other times when you can eat mindfully, because it's not about being perfection. In fact, one woman I spoke with said, "You're not going to get a grade for eating. It's not about getting a grade. So you don't have to be perfect, but just be mindful. Sometimes it's just not going to work."
Thank you. And to go off of that question, the next one is, can it still be considered mindful if it's, I guess, quotes, unhealthy food? So, like fast food, I'm assuming, or convenience type food.
That's yeah, and another really good question, Amy. You can eat pizza mindfully. And I had one had a he's actually a staff member who said to me, he and his wife and their two kids, they eat pizza every Friday. Does that mean I have to stop eating pizza? And then I asked him a little bit. Well, tell me a little bit about. First of all, the answer is no. You don't have to stop eating pizza. But I asked him, tell me how you eat the pizza. And he said, well, we get the pizza, we bring it home, we sit in front of the television. And then he kind of said, I think we're kind of zombies eating. And I said, well, just consider this. What if you designated, maybe it's your dining room table, maybe it's your kitchen table, have the pizza, and all of you just talk and eat the pizza. And then when you're finished, go in front of the television and watch television together. And he said, yeah, I get it. That's a good idea. We can concentrate on eating and enjoying, but we also can be looking at our food and being mindful of what we're eating as well.
Thank you. The next question, and this goes off the presentation, you gave some really great tips on how to be more aware or more in the moment. How would you tell somebody to approach this who's brand new to trying mindful eating? Should they be setting goals? Should they pick one thing at a time, like chewing more or avoiding distraction? Should they do multiple things at once? What's the best way to start?
Another great question, Amy. This is, again, something that I get a lot. Um, I think it's important for someone to say, "What can I do first?" Because it doesn't, it makes no sense for me to say, "Well, you should concentrate on this," when in fact that's not going to be something that's going to work for them. So I would say, "What do you think? What do you think is going to be something that you can do?" And it might be slowing down. It might be because when I talk to students and other clients, a lot of times people will say, "I eat so fast." And I say, not that you have to be the turtle necessarily, but just slow down to be a little bit more in the range of where some other people eat. Because when people say they eat fast, they often are the fastest one. I'm waiting for everybody. And so that might be a good one. One of my favorites, again, is telling students, take their cell phone and just put it down. Don't look at it while you're eating. If 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 you can, if students in particular, or really any of us, can graduate to do that, that's huge. um, and then really just setting a table for themselves. This is maybe less for students, although if you live off campus, a placemat, maybe it's a candle with a battery. Just make it a precious place where you're eating, because eating is special. It should be enjoyable.
Okay, I have about 3 more questions. Let's see. The next one. So, what happens when we slip up or overeat, or we're on a good track of being very mindful, and then it's a bad weekend or a bad meal?
The one thing about mindful eating that I love, this is, I think, one of the best parts about it, is it's all about being positive and treating your body with respect. If something happens, we all have situations where we overeat, or we eat when we're really not hungry, but it just looks so good. Cut ourselves a break. The next day is a new day. Start over again. Give yourself a hug. Nobody else can give us a hug right now. But just like, we're so hard on ourselves. Just say, okay, back on the journey. Um, Again, when it's not about a destination, it's getting back on the path.
Okay, this question is a little bit more for our viewers with maybe children. So, what is a good way to get the kids incorporated? Can you teach your younger ones? Are there ages that are more appropriate to use this with? How to get the children involved?
Yeah, that's a great question. One thing I didn't really talk about that I think comes in with families is one thing about mindful eating. It's about, I mean, I talked about it a little bit. It's about understanding when you're hungry and when you're satisfied, not stuffed and not starving, when you're hungry and when you're satisfied. And kids are great uh, most of the time, unless really adults interfere. Kids are pretty good about saying, "I'm hungry." And a lot of times parents will say, "No, you can't eat. You got to wait till dinner," or or something like that. And they have littler stomachs, so they need to eat more frequently. As much as families can recognize that they are in charge of bringing the what into the kitchen and into the pantry. If they're not like all kinds of snacks and cookies, and I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with that, but if that's all there is, and little Johnny wants the cookie, but there are no apples, I think that parents can do a lot with making sure there's lots of healthy, but also treats in the house. So there's not any recognition of this is good and this is bad, because all of that can blow up in our faces when students come to college, and have feelings about good food, bad food. So I would say really pay attention to kids and their hunger, and make sure that you don't have distractions at the table, and try not to, as a family, sit in front of the TV or everybody's going which way. And mom and dad have to set good examples of putting their own phone aside and trying to make the dining experience really, really precious.
That sounds great. So my final question, probably more for the student viewers, but are there any apps or trackers you would recommend that kind of assist people in this process? Or, do you have any recommendations for great resources for people to look into this a little bit more?
That is another great question. I do have a couple of apps that I can suggest. Um, but I do have a reservation about about recommending them, because some of them, they will get into, they'll ask a lot of questions, and you're kind of cool by the first couple of questions, and then they ask 10 more minutes of questions, and then you get sucked in, and now you have to pay, and you really just wanted something that was free and easy and things like that. So I'm a little bit less about, necessarily recommending a specific app, and at the same time there's a lot out there. I guess part of me is feeling like, okay, we're saying put this down, but then you got to look at this and you know put stuff in, and so I'm a little bit more about, there's a couple websites, a couple, like books like this one, Savor. There's another book that's called, I think, Savor What You Eat, that's coming out in May. Now, whether you want to buy it or listen to it, or something like that, some of these things, and having a couple of podcasts or going online, and I can make some recommendations. Not a great answer to end with, but I would say I would say maybe just a little bit less about apps. We have a little too many apps in our lives.
That sounds good. And I think that it would be really nice. We could end up putting the resources that you suggest in maybe like the description down below whenever it comes time to post this. Um, I guess any last tips or tricks from you before we end this?
I would say the last thing is, it goes back to, mindful eating is about being in the moment, about enjoying the journey without judging. There's no good or bad food. All foods fit. They truly do. And when you come to this kind of peace with eating, it just it just makes, and I hear this from students, it makes for a much more joyful experience. And that's what we all want. We all want that in life. So that's how I'd end, Amy.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to present this today. And I look forward, and Nancy and I look forward to further sessions.
Great. My pleasure. Thank you.